With endless amounts of toys, comics, movies, video games, TV shows, whatever you can think of, Batman is one of the most prolific properties in all of human history. And with all this stuff getting made, that means there's tons of it that gets lost, falls from the cracks, or never gets finished. So for this episode of Your Lost Media, let's take a look at some Batman lost media, including a strange NES console, a lost movie from the Philippines, and a bizarre edit to Static Shock, as well as another solved case from a previous episode. Episode 7, let's go. This video is brought to you by Bright Cellars. I enjoy wine. I mean, I'll pretty much drink whatever you hand me. But, no, I do enjoy wine, but I'm not really an expert on it, so when it comes time for me to buy my own, I'm kinda lost. But Bright Cellars helps you figure out the right wine for your taste. You just take a quick 7-question quiz based around your taste preferences so they can determine which wines are best for you. Then they ship the bottles straight to your home, saving you the trouble of going to the store and picking out something you might not even like. And if you don't like any of their picks, they'll send you a replacement bottle in your next box. Each wine comes with a wine education card. It teaches you all about tasting notes, the best pairings with them, the origin of the wine. This month I got Life in the Woods, Pedal Press Rosé. I think I actually got this in the first box I ever got from Bright Cellars and I liked it. We got Worldline Cabernet Sauvignon. Get it focus over there. It's all cosmic. Color Fast. They sent me this one a bunch of times and it's pretty consistently good. Cabin 5. Kinda looks like a A24 movie over here. Vanishing Act. Got a lot of spooky looking wines this month, I'm feeling it. Bright Cellars is giving my viewers 50% off their first 6-bottle box. Just follow the link in the description to take the quiz and get started. So let's start off with the solved case. The lost episode of Vince McMahon's Ass cartoon. The lost episode, Passion of the Ass, was uploaded to the Internet Archive by Ducky23191 and shared on my subreddit r/wang by HorselessHH. It's a 1 minute and 40-second cartoon in which a drunken Mel Gibson is forced to kiss Vince McMahon's ass. That said, this isn't the end to the mystery. If you watch the video, you'll recall that there were several episodes that were finished and never released. And to that point, I was provided with the contact information for a person involved in the production of these cartoons. As of the recording of this video, they have not responded to my email, and I doubt they can legally share all that much about it. At the very least though, I'm hoping they can share the plots of the episodes with me. Anyway, now it's Batman time. The first story comes from a viewer named Taki. Several years ago, on a Dutch version of eBay called Marketplaats, Taki's friend Marlon bought a Batman NES. And he was trying to figure out what exactly this is. Now, your first thought is probably that it was some kind of promotional NES released for Batman. I mean, in this period in time, we have the Michael Keaton movies, Batman is huge. Why wouldn't they release something like this, along the lines of, if you remember, the Nintendo 64 Pikachu edition? But the thing is, those kinds of promotional tie-ins were a lot more common later on. Not so much during the NES era. I'd never heard of a Batman NES being made, nor really any other special modified Nintendo Entertainment Systems. Nor could I find evidence of it ever having actually existed. On the underside of the system, you see the date 1985, which is of course the year the NES actually came out. I'd think that if this were an official special edition, there would be something on it to indicate that date as well. With the first NES Batman game coming out in 1990, and Return of the Joker in 1992. It's also worth noting that both of these games were published and developed by Sunsoft. It's super unlikely that Nintendo would release special hardware for a third-party developer's game. To me, it seems pretty likely that this was just a custom someone made and wound up selling online. However, there is one thing about this that did kind of pique my interest. The console came with a 255-in-1 bootleg game cartridge. And it opened me up to the interesting possibility that perhaps there was a bootleg company that sold Batman NES systems. I still think the custom explanation is the most likely one, but perhaps one of you knows something about the existence of Batman bootleg consoles. Continuing the theme of bootleg stuff, I have a submission from Mike Gloglovac. Batman fights Dracula. If the concept of Batman vs. Dracula seems familiar, it's probably not because you remember this movie. Rather, they actually have crossed paths a few times in official Batman media. But thanks to the beauty of Asian countries' complete lack of regard for intellectual property laws, This 1967 film is as unofficial as it gets, seemingly taking inspiration from Adam West's Batman series that had made its debut the year prior. According to translated newspaper articles, the movie tells the story of a mad scientist named Dr. Zorba, whose evil plans are constantly thwarted by Filipino Batman, who for some reason has a bootleg Air Jordan logo on his chest. So Dr. Zorba comes up with a plan to defeat Batman once and for all: resurrect Dracula, make him even more powerful, and use the power of mad science to control him. Can Filipino Batman and his sidekick Ruben put an end to Dracula and Dr. Zorba's treachery? I assume so, but you know, the movie's long gone, so who knows? Think about this movie though, it almost certainly did come out, with posters advertising its release on the date of June 3rd, 1967. Attempts had been made by YouTuber El Supersonic Q, as well as Redditor Ask Me About Sharks, to contact people associated with the production, as well as eBay sellers who specialize in Filipino films. Of course, of the few people who did respond, none of them had any idea where you could possibly get a hold of this film. And something to note with this film, sometimes people will find some footage and think, oh, I found Batman Fights Dracula, when in fact it's actually footage from a similar Filipino film released the year before, called James Batman, and it's an unofficial crossover between Batman and James Bond. This one can actually be viewed in its entirety on YouTube. That being said, I do think it's extremely likely that we eventually find this film, because we know that it definitely existed, and it was almost certainly released. A lot of the problem with finding it is just the language barrier stifling the search. So, you know, if I have any Filipino viewers who happen to have older family members that might know about this film, see what they think about it. Finally, we have a story from Dennis Lobanok regarding Static Shock. Static Shock, for the uninitiated, was a cartoon that debuted in 2000 based on DC hero Static, but adapted for a younger teen audience. Although I don't remember a lot of the finer details about it, I do remember liking the show a lot when it was on TV. Think about Static Shock, even though it was made by DC, it was originally intended to just be a part of its own little world. By season 2, however, it becomes an official part of the DC animated universe. That includes Batman the Animated Series, Superman, New Batman Adventures, and Batman Beyond. And here's where things get interesting. Because Static at first doesn't exist in the proper DC universe, things like Batman and Superman and all that exist to him in the way that exists to us, as fiction. And this is the crux of Dennis's email. In the 5th episode of Static Shock, entitled Playing My Song, one of the characters says the line, "Even Clark Kent has a day job." This makes sense, you know, if you're a person who's familiar with Superman through comic books and movies or whatever else. But if you're a person who exists in the same reality as Superman, how do you know that he's Clark Kent? Makes no sense. So, after Static becomes a part of Superman's reality in season 2, every subsequent airing and release of this episode is edited to remove that line, allegedly. This could absolutely be some kind of Mandela effect type deal where the line's just being misremembered, but it stands to reason that if that line were there, it would be edited out to avoid any kind of conflict. And in the context of the episode, in which Virgil and Richie set up in an abandoned gas station for superhero business, and in which Virgil's father makes him get a job working at Burger Fool, the line would have absolutely made sense. Essentially, what it would take to dig this one up is for someone to have simply taped the first airing of this episode when it was on TV. Which I think is a pretty likely thing to have happened. At this point, we've had 5 episodes for people to decide whether or not they like the show, and people used to tape stuff they like all the time. The question is basically whether someone has held on to these tapes and if they see this video. But anyway, that's all for now. If you have a lost media story of your own that you'd like me to cover, please send an email to wanglostmedia@gmail.com. And if you like this video, check out my video about one of history's most important bootlegs, Street Fighter Rainbow Edition. I'm out.